Eagles legend Wilbert Montgomery. Thanks for joining me. How are you, Wilbert?
I'm doing good, Jeff. How you doing, man? It's
I'm
been a while since I've seen you last.
yeah, I'm doing great. Now 70 years old. You played 9 seasons. Of course, you coached for 20 years. You either are sick of football, I've had enough, or you miss it and you're glued to the TV on Sundays.
Oh yeah. No, I pick and choose what I want to watch at this time, and you look for the high-profile games, the games that got a lot of substance to, a lot of meaning to. Those are the games that I'm interested in playing because, too, at this point here, like you said, all those years of playing and coaching and doing some scouting work, it's like I don't have no favorites, but I have to always bleed green.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And what's not to love about what the Eagles have done this season, unless you're in Philadelphia on a daily basis, and then for some reason I'm trying to understand why a 12-2 team that starts 12-2 that wins a franchise record 10 straight games, there's some complaints about the way the team is playing, which maybe it's a Philly thing. I'm not really sure if it's a Philly thing or not.
Well, you know what, and it's funny because of too, I feel like I grew up in Philly after living there for 25 years, and as a player, you're exposed to it, you experience it, and then after I got out of it, it was still the same thing, no matter what the changes with the teams, the coaches, management. I just think in terms of it's a Delaware Valley thing. It's just that you just have to be a part of it.
So nowhere else in the country would a fan base be complaining about a team that's won 10 straight and a team that starts 12-2?
No, nowhere else like that. I mean, I'm talking about when I was coaching in St. Louis and we was the greatest show on turf, man, even when it wasn't great, the fans wasn't like that. You
Right.
know
Yeah.
about that.
And to your point, I worked out there after the greatest show on turf. And I remember covering Scott Rowland on the Cardinals. And at the All-Star break, he's hitting 206. And nobody's saying a word about Scott Rowland. I believe at the time he's your highest paid player. And to your point, that fan base there, they're not as hard on their players. But look, when you look at this Eagles team, I mean, there's been some drama, over the last few weeks with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. I mean, I'm sure as a player, there were times, even of guys that you loved as a teammate, maybe almost like a brotherly love kind of thing, you weren't always getting along so well. I mean, do you remember ever having a thing with one of your teammates where you're going, come on, this guy's got to get it together?
No, I really, and like I said, altogether, 38 years in the National Football League, I've never been exposed and been around that conversation. And going back that we talked about the greatest show on turf, we had Isaac Bruce, Hall of Fame. We got Torrey Smith, who's going to be a Hall of Fame. You had Ozzie King, Ricky Pro. We had Kurt Warner. You had Marshall Faulk, a Hall of Fame. And they all, I'm just naming the guys just on offense. They didn't spat. They didn't argue about that. Hey, it's my turn. I get the next ball and what is going to happen. But it also goes back to saying this, Jeff, and I know this here for a fact. When we put the game plan together, my job was every week after we put it on the board, I would get up there and I would have to say, in the passing game, these are the Isaac Bruce passes. These are the Torrey Hope passes. These are the Marshall Faulk passes. This is the Ricky Pro. This is the Ozzie King. So I would put red dots when Mike Marsh called the play and Kurt called the play. He knew who was the primary receiver and who was going to be the secondary receiver. So we kind of knew where that ball was going, anticipate. Oh, I got one. Or if I don't have one, here's two. So it was like that.
There's only one ball to go around, right? And so since they bring in Saquon Barkley, who's just been absolutely ridiculous, I hope you saw the backwards hurdle. Tell me you've seen the
Oh,
backwards.
without a doubt. I was there at that game.
You were.
Yes.
Are you just thinking on your best day, you take yourself back to the 70s and the 80s, on your best day, could you do something like that?
No, because until those are things you don't plan. It just happened. I mean, some of the greatest moves that ever been done out there on the football field, or it's just something that's just that gift. I say it's a God gift that that's built within you and a mechanism that's something that just happened and you don't know how you did it. You just did it.
It's pretty special what he's done. I mean, you've been around some amazing running backs. You talk about Marshall Faulk. Obviously, you saw Barry Sanders play. Where do you put Saquon Barkley in that conversation? I mean, he seems like he's a combination of a little Barry Sanders, a little Marshall Faulk, or is he all Barry Sanders? Is he his own guy? I mean, when you look at what Saquon Barkley is doing, what he has done, what are your thoughts on Saquon?
One is that I would never put him in the class, in the group, in the conversations with Barry Sanders, Marshall Faulk, because in two, they were on a smaller version. They weren't quite as thick and muscular as he is. He is. You know, the things that he is doing is basically is new, and it's exciting. The Gen Z or the Gen X generation, because in those guys, I don't think you're ever going to get another Barry Sanders. And I would say Shady was the closest thing to Barry that I have seen. But Marshall was in another element himself, and that's where you looked at him as like an Edgerrin James type of guy that would do the things that Marshall could do, come out of the backfield, line up as a receiver, and it's hard to stop him. I don't think you're going to have those kind of guys coming out in this era. But Saquon is different because he's solid. I would say he's around 6 feet or 6'1", 200 and at least 15 to 20 pounds. So he has a thick body, whereas those guys, they had short, stocky bodies, and they just don't. Just totally different built.
Yeah, and it's tough. A lot of people like to compare this guy to that guy, this and that. Saquon Barkley said earlier this season that he wants to be the greatest, if not one of the greatest of all time. Do you think he's in that class, in that conversation, despite the new era, the new way of the running back and the way that position has evolved?
I just, I take my hat off to him because, too, as a running back coach for all those years, it's hard to say that the game is going to constantly go that direction where they're giving you the ball. Just giving you the ball and letting you run with it. See, because when I played, we were always going to be introduced to 7-man, 8-man box. They was going to shut the run game down. Today's game here is quite simple, and a lot of turns is because until you got a 6-man box or a 5-man box. If you got 5 in the box, you're gonna run the ball all day. You put 6 in the box, you got a choice. You got a choice to run it or you can throw it. So it's a different game. See, and that's where with a guy like Barkley, you can take full advantage of what the defenses are giving you right now. And you don't have to worry about 3 linebackers on the field and then the safety's coming down. You don't have to worry about that today.
I mean, since they've been feeding him the ball, I mean, this Eagles team, they win 10 straight games, a franchise record. I mean, it's really been Saquon, and you wonder with all the carries he's had, the workload, can they maintain this going into the playoffs? I mean, that's obviously a big question because this Eagles team really is built to make a Super Bowl run here, right? And so how much of a challenge is that as a coach, as a former coach, do you try to manage that workload? I mean, look, he just passed you for second most rushing yards in a single season. He's really up there with those yards and with those carries.
I mean, he's up there, and he's one of those guys you're going to look at it and say, when you start talking about O.J. Simpson, the Eric Dickerson, and those guys, at least Bear, didn't do that. But when you start talking about those guys are guys that, too, is the carries that you're giving your running back and that pounding that he's taking. I mean, yeah, he's more doable than most backs are today because he take care of himself. And that's always a negative because until you get beat down. But this time of the year, this time of the season, it's so important that you run the ball because until when you run the ball, teams don't know that it's just going to be a play action or boot or naked or you take advantage of that because now you're sucking the defense down and you can throw the ball over your head. And that was a prime example of what just happened last week against Pittsburgh. He gets sucked in. Now you got your passing games that open up because Pittsburgh was coming in there. Hey, we are going to shut him down. We're going to shut him down. And every time you put the ball in his stomach and pull it up, you got your receivers are running across the field, your tight ends and down the field that you got some shots to take advantage of. But this time of the year, the team that can run the ball the best, play action the best, and do nakeds and boots the best, this is their world. And I love what Jalen is doing right now. And then I have to say that was kudos to Kevin. Kevin putting a great plan together. And I do think just because of a little bit of dissension and a little bit disrupt, the guys was a little bit upset, it kind of opened up. It opened up the playbook again.
Yeah, I mean, they had a lot of tough conversations going into that Steelers game. I mean, do you remember as a player having, maybe during a difficult period of a season or a difficult time, having a tough conversation with with your quarterback, with another teammate about trying to just get on the same page and get gelling? Do you ever recall having a conversation, having to go down that road?
I never, because it kind of, you like it in one respect, and then you say, okay, don't make it about you because it's supposed to always be about the team first.
Sure.
And then it's like not individual play, but it did slap a few people in the face and say, hey, God, if we're going to win together as a team, if we're going to play together as a team, and we're going to stick together as a team, God, we have to spread this ball around, even though it's one ball. But you also, I like this part about the one ball deal. It's one ball, right, but it's one ball that you can go from a run to a pass, to a run. So you can easily change that. Or you can go from one run to another run, one run to another run to a pass. And that's what I think in terms on that Philadelphia got working for them as well.
It's still hard to believe that Saquon Barkley's even on the Eagles and the Giants just let him walk out the door. I know you've been a part of a lot of organizations, but does it seem shocking that the Eagles were able to have access to Saquon Barkley in free agency?
Well, and it's funny, Jeff, that we talked about that because my son, who he was watching Hard Knocks, and I happened to just sit there, and sit there and watch that segment when they let him go. And I said, that got to be the most crazy move that a GM can make. Because you don't have control when you decide not to sign the guy, that someone in your division can pick him up. And when he's a guy that always leave a thumbprint and a footprint in a game day. I know it could be passing, it could be catching a great pass or throwing a great block, but you don't want him to run for the yards that he's running for this year. That was a crazy move. And to answer your question, I had never been around anything like that, but when players got older, yes, but not where he's in his prime.
Right, and that could really haunt the Giants for years to come. I mean, you don't know how this is going to work out. Obviously, this season, it looks horrible, and you'd like to believe that if Saquon can stay healthy, he's going to have another 5 or 6 years of just, great performances and being able to continue at this level.
Yes, and that's the good thing about that, because he's young. He's young. And I take that back. There was one other move like that happened. Eric Dickerson going to the Rams.
Right. And so when you look at this Eagles team overall, and I know you have some experience with the Lions, you coached there, you played your final season in the NFL in Detroit. So you may have a little bit of, you may feel a certain way about the Lions and have a lot of respect for that organization. But when you look at these two teams, I mean, this seems like 1-2. Not a lot of people are talking about the Vikings. It seems like it's the Eagles, Lions, 1-2 coming out of the NFC and maybe out of the NFL.
Well, and that's the big thing. My son coached there with the Vikings. He's running back coach there, but you know what? It's you don't get the same. You're making a cake, but there's something out of that cake with the Vikings. But when you start talking about the Lions, and then you start talking about Philadelphia Eagles, the one thing that the Eagles have stayed away from is injuries.
Right.
And see, the injuries plays a big part in winning championships. And Detroit has gotten their share. And and I like to say that they have done a great job of spreading that ball around. They making plays, but now they have gotten the other running back hurt, which is going to be a problem for them because he's the pounder and Gibbs is the finesse guy. So now it's kind of like they down to one dimensional with that run game. So, and what happened in the game this past weekend, it's like now you can start rolling the coverage and start covering the receivers because you don't have to respect the running game as much.
Right. And look, I mean, Gibbs and David Montgomery, of course, is now injured with that knee injury. Those two guys have, that tandem has kind of slowed down a little bit the last few weeks. And whether it's the way the defenses are playing them, whether they're getting tired or just the way it's worked out, now they're going into, they have a tough Vikings team that they're going to finish the season with. And when you look at the Lions with all those injuries, I mean, they're saying, look, it's next man up. It doesn't matter. But what does it do to a locker room when you have those injuries? I mean, the Eagles are now in prime position to take over sole possession of the 1 seed in the NFC and really make a strong case for a Super Bowl run.
Oh, it makes a very strong case for the Super Bowl run and to take over. And like you said, Brad Holmes had done a tremendous job as the GM there, bringing in talent, and he had a lot of guys playing good ball around the people that he's bringing in. But when you bring and got talent in, and it's not top notch, it's not going to last as long. I mean, we are playing. When I said we, I'm talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. They haven't making no changes on defense or offense. Their guys came in great shape. Now, when you go back to the beginning of the season, because I was there in training camp, and I went to training camp, and it was like it was disarray a little bit because until Kevin Moore offense wasn't gelling as well when you start off preseason. It was like, hey, well, we coming, we looking at what's taking place in preseason in the early part of the season. We say, hey, the Eagles weren't gelling at all in those first few ball games. But the thing was that they were learning each other.
Right. You got same with Vic Fangio. I mean, same with Fangio on the defensive side.
Yeah, that's where I was going. And see, and Vic Fangio and I go all the way back to the Philadelphia Stars days. And Vic, when he was working with the Philadelphia Stars, but Vic and I worked together in Baltimore. His secondary coach, we worked together in Baltimore, and both, and Joe Cashper and I, we all work together. So I understand what Vic is doing on defense because until people don't realize, Vic was a part of that great Baltimore Ravens defense with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Halo Donati, Terrell Suggs, and all those guys. See, people don't forgot about those guys and Kelly Gregg, and those are we talking about Pro Bowl guys. So when you start talking about Vic Fangio, you start looking at Sweat, and you're looking at Dean, and you're looking at those guys, and on defense, man, he's doing what he was doing with the Baltimore Ravens.
So are the Eagles, in your opinion, the Super Bowl favorites right now? I mean, are you picking the Eagles to not only go to the Super Bowl but win the Super Bowl? Where do you believe this team is at?
Well, this team twofold. They got to stay, barring injuries. Let me say it like this: barring injuries, if everything still stands today as it stands to the end of the season, I think they Super Bowl bound, and they stand a chance on horsing that trophy again because I don't see anyone out there beating them. I think in terms of if they played Detroit, if Detroit had their full health, I think Philadelphia is more physical. Detroit is a finesse team, and Philly is a physical team. And I think in terms on everyone talk about how great a coach Kyle Shanahan is and what he does with his quarterbacks and his receivers and spread that ball around. I worked with Kyle Shanahan. I understand his system quite well. I understand what he do. But I'm gonna give you this one nugget here about Kyle Shanahan. If you look at his history with quarterbacks, they always get hurt, starting with RG3.
Right.
Look at his history of quarterbacks. These quarterbacks always get hurt, and they're not, seems like they are not going to lead them into the Super Bowl. They lead into the Super Bowl like he'd have been there, but it's just that they can't stay healthy. But I just think in terms on Philly stays healthy, they walk into the to the Super Bowl.
I'm afraid of the Lions, and I'll be honest. I get all the injuries, but I'm afraid of the Lions.
Well, here's the thing. Jeff, you were back there in St. Louis. Think about that. When we were the best show on turf, it all depends on take the ball, score first. If you take the ball and you score first, you put the other team already playing catch up.
Well, the Eagles have been terrible. I mean, the Eagles have been terrible at that. They're the lowest scoring team in the NFL in the first quarter. They've been awful at that. So that doesn't bode well.
Yeah, that don't bode well. But if they stop the other team, but if Jalen played, if they come out with the same type of game plan that they came out against Pittsburgh, I mean, they will be able to move the ball up and down the field. I just think in terms on with the coordinator, he's still, Kevin Moore, he's still trying to get used to what he can do with his receivers because when you got AJ, Devontae, and Dallas Goedert, now he's hurt, but what is Watson? I mean, you got to learn how to use all your weapons and using them and let them do what they can do. Not you feel like you got to manufacture plays. I mean, the good offensive team is like I said, hey, you don't change and start coming up with new ideas. You do what these guys know and let them make plays. You see, and Hurts is too good. I don't think there's a quarterback in the National Football League can throw a better deep ball than Hurts.
Wow.
You look at it and you look around the league right now. There's nobody can throw a better deep ball than Hurts can throw. He's on target when he throws it. And if it's off target, it's barely coming off the fingertips. Now he's good at throwing what people call lance routes and slant routes. And that's where Devontae comes in, big hand for a small guy. He catches that slant and he catches that ball. And those are connection there. And God, now who is replacing him? Dallas, the other tight end. But to get him in the fold, I just think they're unstoppable if they play with the same type of game plan they had this past week.
Yeah, and you talk about the health. I mean, what kind of pounding is Saquon going to take? And when you talk about just that workload for a running back, I mean, you felt it for 9 years, as a player. What does that feel like? I mean, I know you've done a lot of work behind the scenes with Dick Vermeil to help get former players compensated with, brain injuries and things like that. But what kind of pounding does a guy take, and just how physical is it for someone that's never experienced, running between the tackles?
Well, I can tell you this, and I'm just saying, one old-time running back talk about running backs today. You can play on Monday. Your body don't start to come around until that Thursday. Sometimes it don't come around that Thursday. It's all depends. When he's carrying that ball over 16 times a ball game, and then you catching 3 or 4 passes out of the backfield. it started to wear down. And I give it to you like this, Jeff. If I gave you a 2x4 while you sitting at your desk and doing this time of your show, and you took that 2x4 and you just was tapping on your desk up and down, up and down. By the time end of the show, that that by you tapping on it and on the corners of it, it started to splinter and it started to wear. And the fragments of it start to split and go in, start to disappear. That's just like I said, that's a running back because he starts the season off 100%. This time of the year, he's probably around mid-80s percentile.
I thought what you were getting at is you're going to whack me with the 2x4s. That's what I thought you were getting with. I wanted to talk to you about the your work kind of behind the scenes with helping getting former players compensated due to brain injuries like CTE and the effects with ALS. Why has that been so important to you?
Well, it's so important to me, because I've been on both sides of the spectrum. And see, the league go out there and they say, and they paint the picture and they tell you that all what they are doing, trying to help these players to get paid. And I call it, the whole thing. I said, you already said, it's bull crap. You know what I mean? They ain't trying to help them play because until when you walk out there, no matter what team you play on or how you classify as a player on the practice squad or the developmental squad or whatever, you are part of that shield and you are part of that league because until you go out there and you practice every day and you get to your butt knocked off, the league is not doing anything to really help them. They're doing anything to prevent them because until it's so many players that have played this game and has passed away, frustrated with the National Football League because until they have fought against them and denying them with a concussion case, denying them if they got ELS, denying them if they got dementia. They denying the players, and I mean, when you put that uniform on, you think in terms on the league is going to do right by them, but they're not doing right by them. And my thing is that Doug Grossner and his group do a good job help these people to try to get the money that they played hard and worked hard to try to get. I mean, I just go through there, and when the guys call me, and I just try to give them some of the answers that I went through and try to help them along the way. But the biggest thing is just concentrate on continue seeing your doctors, taking your medication, and the medication does help, but it's not going to prevent what's going on. But it's just that it's going to slow up the progress.
So you don't think the NFL has done a better job in helping protect players, and has done a good job as far as with everything we know now to not only protect them but try to make the game, which is a violent game, to make it safer?
I don't think so. I don't think so because until I'm not saying like this, Jeff. There was a few years back I came up with a device, and the device was just like a red light. All right. All it is, it's a clip onto your helmet. And we got devices inside the helmet for the Mike linebacker to get the signals from the sidelines. We got the device inside the helmet to give the quarterback the play. And I came up with a device just that you can clamp onto your helmet, and it went red light, green light, yellow light. Green means you were still fine and you can go. Yellow means you got hit hard, and it might be a caution. Red, when it turned red, if you got hit hard, that means that you probably got a concussion or you need to get out again. And they told me that they did not want no devices of the such kind placed on the helmet. But then again, they come out with these big old soft pads that you put on your helmet, but the impact of the licks are not so much padding the helmet. The impact of the lick is basically when you get hit, because not everybody's going to wear that cover. I forget the name of what they call it, but everybody's not going to wear that unless it's mandatory. And even if that's mandatory, that's not going to stop you from getting hit hard or taking a lick and going down, hitting your head against the turf. I mean, that's the biggest impact when you
Because
hit
I
the turf.
think, yeah, and I think before the NFC Championship game in 1980, or maybe going into the Super Bowl, you had a serious concussion, right? I mean, and so
Yes.
so the concussions that maybe you suffered as a player, what are the effects that you're having today?
Oh, memory loss. Uh, I deal with that. It's the memory loss is the big thing. Uh,
Right.
I mean, the conversation part is the big thing because until you can start talking about something and now you get off the conversation you was talking about, you move on. I just think in terms on it, just so many things happen, and you need assistance around the house. I mean, it's hard to just get out in the car and just drive and go places because until you can go somewhere, but you may not know how to get back. You kind of like lost and turn around. So pretty much every time I leave the house, somebody have to be with me
Wow.
to that because until I see that with a lot of guys out there facing that, and not so sad to see that you get from these licks that you are taking, you see that the Parkinson and dementia is really has taken over. He lost a teammate not last year, a year or so ago, and Frank LeMaster. Was at the Super Bowl, not Super Bowl, at the Hall of Fame dinner, and then just the week after that, he was gone. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy, and I've seen a lot of my teammates fall by the wayside.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, especially so many from that 1980 team that has really, really struggled. And I know you and Dick Vermeil have done a lot of work to really try to help those players, which is, just amazing work you've done behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, Jeff, I appreciate you mentioning Coach V because everybody know Coach V. He gives you everything he got of himself, and don't ask for nothing back. And constantly, he and I we reach out to each other, just checking up on each other and seeing how one doing. But and then we have conversation about some of the old guys and how can we help him. He asked me for some numbers, conversation on could I help him in this area. So we kind of bounce back, and my wife Patty, she gives them information and stuff like that because of the things we went through to get to this point, and at this point here, and it's crazy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I mean, what he did for Leonard Toews when he basically gambled away the Eagles and taking care of his finances for years until he passed away. And obviously, what he's done for you in your career. I mean, he drafted you, and then he gave you also your first coaching job in the NFL. And you went on to 20 years as a coach. And so yeah, he's an amazing guy. I remember going out to his house years and years ago, and he's such a nice guy. Did this great interview, and then he's trying to hand off cases of his wine. I mean, he's the nicest guy. He's the nicest guy ever.
Yes, he is, man, and I'm glad that you and I, we can call it like breaking bread or chopping it up right now because until a lot of people say you got good days and bad days, and pretty much I just said there's no good days. There's no good days, and when you're a former player because until you dealing with something every day,
Right.
you dealing with something every day, and because the aches are always going to be there. The memory loss is starting to go away, and all those things. So there's no good days. I mean, say, and then you turn around saying bad days. They all are bad. Some bad. Some of the days is not as worse than the other days. But I think it turns on when you play this game. You know that hey, you're going to end up on the short side of the stick.
I want to keep you for 2 more minutes here. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, one is that hey, the legacy is no more that hey, I was a Philadelphia Eagles. I played in Philly. I really enjoyed and loved the Delaware Valley, and anytime I got a chance to come back there, I'm all in for any little thing. The serious part is that hey, I was a good good dad, good husband, and I raised my kids the right way. And I hope that they at least follow some of my traits.
And you better hope Saquon Barkley slows down just a hair so he doesn't break some of your records. LeSean McCoy, LeSean McCoy broke your record in 2014, the
Yeah.
all-time Eagles leading rusher. I imagine as a competitor, you're a little annoyed, right? Like you don't stick with
No,
that.
you know, and that's the because until I was fortunate enough to even play the game. I was fortunate enough because really when I came out my senior year, I didn't play. I didn't play my senior year, and I didn't think I was going to get drafted if it wasn't for a guy by the name of Chuck Fairbanks at New England Patriots that failed me on a physical. I would have never got to Philadelphia because he the one told Coach Vermeil about, hey, here's a kid that rushed for a lot of yards in college, scored over, had scored over 78 touchdowns in college. You need running back. Take a chance on this kid here because he's a good athlete.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
now,
you had an amazing run, and you're a great coach and coached some of the greatest players, and Marshall Faulk and Steven Jackson, and you've had an amazing run. And now, at 70, retired. No imitating Saquon. No backwards hurdles over the couch down in Florida.
no, none of that stuff. But love, like you said, I love watching it, and I get the pleasure out of just basically just sitting there and enjoying the game now.
Yeah.
But I get a little upset at sometimes of some of the calls.
So do every single Eagles fan out there. They feel your pain.
Yes, I know they do, especially in Philly.
Well, thanks so much, Wilbert.
Jeff, it's great seeing you again and meet you, man. Like I say, hey, you're a rock star, brother.
You too, man.